The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of the ANA or its members. On today's episode of On Scope, I learn what the hell a data cleanroom is. Very excited for myself. Also, in marketing news you might have missed, why a CPG behemoth finds itself between a rock and a hard place. All that next on Scope. Welcome to On Scope, the marketing podcast brought to you by the ANA and powered by Odyssey, a leading audio streaming platform. You can get all your podcasts, all your music, and all your entertainment on the Odyssey app. I am your host, Mike Berberich, and with me as always, Ryan Dinger, producer of On Scope. Ryan, how are you today, my friend?
Mike, I am doing just fantastic. How are you, buddy?
I'm great. It's early in the week. I'm feeling energized. I'm ready to get going here. And part of the reason that I'm so excited is one of my favorite segments on the show is happening right now.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're getting into marketing news you might have missed.
That's right, Mike. I've got a headline for you that I think is going to feel like, really, this is a marketing news you might have missed, but there's an interesting wrinkle here. So,
Ooh, I'm intrigued.
From Ad Age, Coca-Cola and PepsiCo planning to comply with Trump's DEI policy. You hear that, you're like, yeah, so what?
Yeah.
So is everybody else.
Day
What's
that
the big
ends
deal?
Y.
Right.
Yeah.
So when this came across my desk, I was kind of like, I don't know. But I read deeper in the story, Mike, and I found a little wrinkle from Coke
Hit me with
that
the
caught
wrinkle.
my attention. So, Ad Age reports, Coca-Cola warned that policies that could lead to a less diverse global workforce pose a potential risk to its business going forward. The Atlanta-based company included the cautionary statement in an annual filing, which comes as a broad range of companies respond to President Donald Trump's push to end diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Coca-Cola said in the filing, quote, "Our diverse, high-performing global employee base helps drive a culture of inclusion, innovation, and growth. If we are unable to attract or retain specialized talent or top talent with diverse perspectives, experiences, and backgrounds that reflect the broad range of consumers and markets we serve around the world, our business could be negatively affected." So, Coca-Cola says it's going to comply, but they actually expect that this could affect the bottom line. Pretty interesting little wrinkle, like I said there, huh, Mike?
That's very interesting, especially from a CPG company like Coca-Cola, who hasn't necessarily built its brand on the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not saying that the organization hasn't benefited from it, hasn't acted upon it, but they weren't born of it. So for them to put that in an official statement, too, this wasn't like, one executive was heard to say, this is a decision to have the company as an entity express these feelings. And it really puts into clear perspective the rock and hard place that so many brands are in right now. But
yeah, on that rock and hard place, I mean, Coca-Cola, they're essentially suggesting that a reduction in diversity among its workforce will be bad for the bottom line. But meanwhile, the company has government contracts, and losing those could also affect its bottom line. So really, like you said, the company's in this difficult position where they need to sort of, satiate the desire of the current regime to snuff out some of this movement, while also noting that, we have a ton of research and data that says that these programs actually benefit our bottom line. So what are we supposed to do here? So they're saying they are going to comply. In fact, the chief financial officer, John Murphy of Coca-Cola, said, quote, "The company is focused on having the best talent around the world," but added, "It will, of course, follow any change and regulations at the national level." So they're saying we really don't have any choice to comply, but don't be surprised if this affects our business in a negative way.
Yeah, and a part of me feels like, are we just taking down the signs and returning to business as usual? I mean, they've said it now a couple of times, if we do not retain our diverse, equitable, and inclusive group of talent, we are going to suffer for it. I think there might be a little bit of talking out of both sides of the mouth by necessity in this thing, which makes you think, how much did anybody who's rolled it back publicly really mean it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This throws it into a very, very interesting there's a dynamic to this
Yeah.
that kind of didn't exist before brands like Coca-Cola and even Costco have come out and said, this has worked for us. We know there's data. We're sticking with the data.
Yeah, well, what's funny is like we don't even have to, speculate about this at any point, because in another report from Fortune last week that I saw, Fortune reported that Target, which announced that it was rolling back its DEI policies at the end of January, Target's foot traffic has dropped in the wake of the brand's DEI rollback. And in that story, Fortune reported Target's announcement that it was rolling back its DEI efforts was on a Friday, and on the following week that began January 27th, foot traffic fell 4% year over year, then fell 8.6% the week beginning February 3rd, and 3.9% the week beginning February 10th. It was the first drop in foot traffic this year for Target, with foot traffic for the first 4 weeks of 2025 up between 5 and 11.8%. So traffic was up prior to this announcement, and now the announcement has occurred and foot traffic is down.
That's crazy to me. I think that little wrinkle with it was actually going up puts it into like we're not having a debate about what happened.
There's real world implications now.
Yeah.
You're seeing it, that people are responding. There is a backlash. And you do sort of feel sorry because there's been a backlash either way.
Yeah.
And it's difficult as a brand to know what the right path forward is, but the data sort of tells you what the right path forward is.
Yeah, I was going to say, this really harkens all the way back. I remember, if you recall, the entire Nike, Colin Kaepernick, kneeling for the...
Of course.
Yeah, so that whole controversy, I remember hearing at an ANA event that Nike had the data. They weren't scared. Everybody else was like, oh, what's going to happen if Nike stays with this sponsorship? Nike wasn't one of the people wondering that. It had the data. And so... yeah, it really calls into companies this big, they've got the data and they've got very smart people who know how to analyze it and derive insights from it. So some of these decisions leave you scratching your head, now we're seeing the real world consequences of them. My goodness, is this a spot to keep an eye on?
Yes, for sure.
Ryan, you're always bringing the goods, and like I said, one of my favorite segments, that was marketing news you might have missed.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you, bud. And as a reminder, if you have a guest, a topic, or even a news item you'd like to see covered here on Scope, hit us up at onscope@ana.net. And now, my conversation on data clean rooms with InfoSum's Devon DeBlasio. Everybody, we are back here at ANA Studios for On Scope, the marketing podcast. It is my pleasure to welcome Devon DeBlasio, VP of Product at InfoSum, to the pod. Devon, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate being here.
Devon, you are here because I need some help, right? Today we're talking about data clean rooms. My first question about data clean rooms. What the hell is a data clean room? And why is it such a blind spot for the industry?
That's a great question. I think the biggest reason why it's a blind spot for the industry is because the industry, the ad tech industry specifically, really loves to put a 3-letter acronym on anything in order to just assign basic characteristics of something to make it easier for the ecosystem to understand. Look, I get that. I totally get the concept of let's make this easier. Let's put it into a playbook. Let's make some primers. Let's get it out there. But really what we're seeing is that the concept of data clean room, the terminology of data clean room is actually muddying the waters, in our opinion. So data clean room is something that has been used in the United States to define a certain type of technology, a certain type of protocol that keeps multiple parties safe when connecting first, second, third party data. But we're really seeing an evolution where there's a difference between the data clean room nomenclature and what you're actually doing with the data. And so InfoSum, we were born out of GDPR world, 7 years ago in Europe. We started as a data collaboration platform. We still are a data collaboration platform. We've just taken on the nomenclature or the acronym of DCR in order for us to participate in RFIs and RFPs and kind of play the game. But we're quickly seeing that the use of the term data clean room or how it's being applied in the companies that are taking up the charge calling themselves a data clean room is actually causing havoc around what the true underlying purpose of a data clean room or data collaboration platform is in keeping all the data safe, all the participants transparent in how that data is being used for the different types of downstream data-driven executions and strategies that they're there to participate in. And so with all that being said, a data clean room can sometimes be synonymous with the data collaboration platform. For the purposes of this podcast, let's say they are. It's really a technology and an environment where multiple parties can feel safe and secure to control their privacy governance over their data as they need to essentially connect it with other data assets in order to ask questions on that data. So many use cases that are executed are whether it's targeting, whether it's measurement, whether it's attribution, or just plain insights. It's an environment that should make it easy for any party to actually to ask questions against the data while making sure that the privacy and security of data remains safe by default.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, okay, so that's a lot to unpack, but it is a really good kind of way to introduce this. And that, yeah, like if this were an acronym, what would it be? The Secure Data Collaboration Fact-Finding Platform? Like,
right, exactly.
You know, so data, we needed a way to do it like succinctly, but to your point, that is not the clearest nomenclature to immediately imbue like, oh, right. I'm collaborating with other organizations in a secure way to answer questions that we might want to use that triangulating our data might help with.
Yeah. And I think just to add on that real quickly is that I think it also paints a false narrative of what the value is that you're actually getting for investing in this type of technology. So a data clean room sounds technical. It sounds complicated. Mm-hmm. It sounds like it's built for analysts. But really what it unlocks is the ability to do data collaboration or safe collaboration between parties, and that should be easy. And so we don't want to mislead the buyers or the people that are raising their hand to invest in this technology. It is critical technology, but we feel that the data clean room, again, name may give a false narrative of exactly what it takes to stand up that type of solution, who actually needs to run that solution, and what the outputs of the value you're generating is from that solution, which we feel is really the collaboration piece.
Yeah. We're like 5 minutes into this, and I just know this is going to be an incredibly valuable episode for our listeners because I'm casting my mind back. This is probably 2016, 2017 to one of ANA's Global Growth Council meetings where all of the CMOs from the Fortune 500 get together in a little room, have a cocktail or two, and start talking real shop about marketing.
Right.
And the idea that I wish we could just tell each other what we know without showing the cards that we're holding.
Right.
And this is that made manifest.
You got it.
So fantastic.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've kind of set that baseline. I'm pretty sure we've got some excited marketers listening. So what is the mental approach for a company when they're deciding how to leverage data clean rooms and with whom to partner?
That's a great question. And so this is the type of just questions that we introduce to a client when they first are knocking on our door. Mm-hmm. And like, okay, we need a data clean room. Our CEO or CTO saying that we need this type of technology, but we don't know what to do with it. And so many of the questions that we ask are, what type of data assets do you have, right? So a data collaboration platform, a data clean room requires data from multiple parties, right? It's kind of in the name, it's kind of implied. Right. But then the bigger question is, what do you want to do with that data? And what type of controls do you want over that data as it's being used downstream? And so those are the main questions that we ask clients. What type of data do you have? Where does that data sit? How's that data organized? What does that data look like? And then secondarily, what data do you not have? That's the bigger question we're asking. What data are you missing? Where are the gaps in your knowledge of your customers? Where's the gap in how you're understanding the audiences that you're trying to reach? Where's the gaps in the measurement that you're not getting? And then where do you want to fill those gaps? Who do you want to sit at the table with you to fill in those gaps? Are there people that you already have in your mind that you already have contracts with, the commercial relationships with, whether it's a data partner or a publisher or an agency, or are you looking to discover new partners that you can bring into the mix and actually test and learn, mixing your data together, like you said, without showing your cards, so you can learn a little bit more about your shared customer base before you decide to make a decision on how to use that data downstream.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, and then you just kind of laid out a few of these examples. I could see this being a great almost prenup to a partnership between two major brands to see if that opportunity is actually going to bear out.
One of the first kind of uses of a data clean room and a data collaboration platform was for M&A. So I'm going to go buy this company. I need to understand what the client base looks like compared to my client base. So that was kind of one of the first use cases the technology was originally built for. And then it obviously rapidly evolved into the fact that let's add 2, 3, 4, 5 companies into the mix to see what how the sum is greater than the parts of everything that we're doing together as a unified organization or unified kind of co-op in many cases.
Yeah. So this is great. It's a great segue to my next question. Aside from obvious things, mergers and acquisitions, partnerships on a campaign, things like that, where obviously we're already in the room and we're talking, how do 2 or more organizations pair up to leverage data clean rooms if there's not that obvious and inevitable pathway?
Great question. Yeah. So a big thing that we do is guidance and help curate a partnership between multiple organizations. And so we have a really great customer success team that when they understand what the client's needs are, their strategies, they understand where, let's say if it's an advertiser or an agency as an example, they know what type of channels they want to reach and who they want to reach on those channels. We also have a repository of existing data partners, identity partners, and others already baked into the platform, ready to go. And so what we do is really a consultative approach where we say, like, these are some partners that we think would really work really well with you. Does that make sense? You may not have a commercial relationship with them, but we really say, like, try the data before you buy the data. And it's really data renting, right? You're taking a look at the data. You're taking a look and exploring what the overlap of our customer base looks like, looking at the total scale and reach of what we could do together between me and my other partner, and then looking at the attributes of our shared data assets to really understand the context and the relevancy, all being done before you spend any dollars and cents, all being done also before you really have to sign any contracts because there's no data sharing, there's no data exposure across the board. So I would say 9 times out of 10, someone's coming to us because they have an existing partnership that they're trying to unlock using a data collaboration platform or data clean room. But in many cases, that 10th kind of opportunity is really what drives organizations coming back into the environment more and more, is because the whole point of this is to find something new, not to do the same thing we've always been doing. Right. We're not replacing cookies. That's not the goal. The goal is to find new types of data assets, new ways to combine data assets, new questions we can answer with this connected kind of, really what we call is a private data network that you're essentially building with your partners involved to discover new things.
Well, I love that there's an on-ramp where an organization can kind of just see what this looks like before making those big decisions, reaching out to other organizations and stuff like that. If there were listeners that are still struggling to visualize this, they maybe got the concept down, but to see it in motion in their organizations, could you share some use cases? Maybe one that's the M&A thing was how this all began. Sure. What's a standard one now, and maybe one that's a little more innovative that you've seen?
No, of course. The best way to think about it is I think of this as like a Venn diagram. Remember that from elementary school. And so you have one circle, which essentially, let's say that circle is the advertiser. So let's say it's a retailer. And they have a CRM data set. They have a bunch of information about their buyers, about their customers, and they want to essentially see what those customers look like through the eyes of a CTV provider. Let's say it's a publisher, a CTV publisher, and say they have a circle that's filled with their subscribers, people viewing different types of shows, consuming X amount of content. What a data collaboration platform does is connect those two circles and looks at the essentially the center, the overlap of those two audiences. And so we can first understand which of my customers are your subscribers, and the publisher can understand which of my subscribers are your customers. So first and foremost, we get a match rate, right? Let's say we each have 10 million people in our database. We have a 5 million user overlap. Great. We have a universe of 5 million customers that will find relevance and high propensity both for my products I'm selling as well as the content they're consuming across that CTV provider. But then we're taking it a step further. I know all of the categories and characteristics of my own customers. I'm collecting that. But I don't know necessarily the consumption habits of these people or what types of viewing behaviors would essentially bring them to buy a certain type of product. So essentially all we're doing is in that center circle, we're looking at the total universe of shared customers, but also looking at what makes them unique in the eyes of the other party. And in many cases, what we're doing is just bringing in a third bubble, a fourth bubble, because not everyone has all the answers. And they want to see a greater context of what that consumer looks like as they are actually making their purchases and consuming content across their lives. And so the basic kind of use case is that we have an advertiser that wants to find people who are high propensity purchasers for their product across a CTV provider. Great, let's connect our data via collaboration platform. Let's both query the data, or one person queries the data, one organization queries the data. They refine their audience, and they have a better opportunity to reach the right consumer who's viewing certain types of content that is also a high propensity shopper of a certain product.
Right.
So that's like the basic thing. Advertiser plus publisher equals ROI, right? I would say a more unique use case is really what we're seeing, again, similar type of scenario where we have the retailer, right, who essentially is trying to provide their data into so retail media networks are a great example, right?
Yeah.
So the connection of retail media and connected TV has been a huge boom in the data collaboration, data clean room space, where both the publisher, CTV provider, and the retailer are at the behest of the CPG advertiser, right? The advertiser wants to spend money in order to reach individuals who are consuming certain products and then going to buy those, consuming certain types of media and then going to buy those products in the store. But the CPG provider doesn't have any insight about purchase intent or the basket size or anything to do with the media consumption habits. So the retailer and the CTV provider are essentially using a clean room and data collaboration platform to team up together to drive better ROI and better visibility for the CPG provider. So whatever data the CPG provider may have, they have a little bit of first-party data. They essentially can expand the reach, scale, and scope of that first-party data by working with a retailer for their retail data and a CTV provider for the CTV data. And that also circles back for the closing loop around measurement. So the CPG provider can get really robust measurement reports that the publisher or the retailer can provide, or the agency can provide, sitting over everything, to really give a granular understanding of, was the marketing that we executed actually generating value and conversions on the back end. So those are kind of some of the main scenarios. We have like a 2-party scenario and a 3-party scenario. And again, take it even a step further, what happens if all those parties don't have a common key? That's what you need. The key is the magic thing that allows everyone to speak to each other. It's a common language.
Right.
So what you do is you bring in an identity partner. Bring in multiple identity partners. Pick and choose which identity partner generates the highest match rate. And so those types of 4-way connections is the most common, where we're seeing the CPG provider mixing with the retailer, mixing with the CT provider, and then having the identity partner sit in the center to make sure that all 4 or 3 of those parties are speaking the same language using a common set of keys. Again, without anyone ever taking access or removing the data or seeing any of that data. They're just essentially looking at the essence of the data to drive whatever downstream activities that they're actually trying to execute.
Well, first of all, this feels like the future in general. I hear a lot about ephemeral micro moments and things like that, but it really feels like you're taking your flat persona and adding those dimensions of the parts of their life they're never going to share with you. Why should you know what genre of long form content I like? Bubblegum company.
Totally.
So that's very cool, and I can see it legitimately. I can visualize how this is helping somebody know their customer as a whole human being.
Yeah.
And you've got that. That's absolute table stakes.
We like to say it's intelligence without the identity. You don't need to know the name, the address, the phone number, the email, the social security number of an individual to know what they want to buy, how they're buying, and what they want to buy next.
Yeah.
Right. And so essentially we're removing the creepiness of advertising out of the mix and just focusing on the attributes of what makes a consumer a consumer. You don't need to know who that consumer is. You just need to know what they're buying, where they're buying, how they're consuming, and all these organizations are working together to keep the proprietary and nature of their data and the underlying identity of the customer a secret, while they still all can essentially do their jobs more efficiently.
Love that. And on behalf of all consumers, anybody making marketing less creepy is good in my book.
That's
so
the thing.
Thank you.
We all work in advertising, but we're all consumers, we're all customers, right? So I think you just can't forget that when you work for these types of organizations or you're working in advertising. You need to keep that in mind, that you are still a consumer at the end of the day. You still have data assets of yourself that you need to look out for. And that's a big reason why I work at InfoSum, is because I feel that there's a better way to do things that doesn't put the customer at risk and also doesn't violate the competitive advantage of the individual companies that have to work with other companies to succeed. But you can do all of this in a more safer, more above bar, more ethically centric way.
All right, everybody stick around, because when we come back, we're going to talk about what to watch out for when entering into the space of data clean rooms. We'll be right back.
Ryan,
I'd like to play a game.
Okay, I'm a little nervous, but also intrigued. So
Good.
Go
That's
on.
That's why I like to keep you. We're going to play a game called Big, Small.
Okay, I don't know this one.
Yeah?
No, I've never heard of
Oh,
this.
it's a classic. So I'm going to name something.
Mhm.
And you have to tell me whether it's big or small.
Okay, sounds easy enough.
All right. That's what they all say. Grain of rice.
Small,
Blue whale.
big,
Mouse.
small.
$15 billion.
That's big.
Damn, you're really good at this.
4 for 4, baby. What do
Yeah.
you think you're dealing with now?
You never play big, small?
I know the size of things.
Dude,
That's just
you took to
that's a
that.
skill of mine. You know, I can intuit the size.
Okay, I really thought this was going to be a much longer segment, but $15 billion, other than being big,
Yes.
is the number of dollars that marketers spend on an annual basis doing something that we generally refer to as data collaboration.
Wow.
Now that's where I'm taking my first party data and I'm going shopping for some third party data because I want to see a new dimension. I want to put them together, shake them all up and see what happens, right?
Ideally in a data clean room.
Ideally in a data clean room. Yeah, of course in a data clean room. When are we going to go back to my interview segment with egg on my face with Devon?
I wouldn't let that happen to you.
I appreciate that. But perhaps one incredible podcast episode is not enough for you to know everything you need to know about data clean rooms.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But you know who's got your back?
Who?
The ANA's got your back.
Who else?
I mean, who else indeed? The ANA's ultimate playbook for data clean rooms provides marketers and analysts the information necessary to either begin or expand their data collaboration journey using data clean rooms. This is that perfect balance of privacy and proprietary information with expanding your horizon and generating new insights not possible with your data alone.
Yeah.
This sounds like the move, right?
It sounds like it's a great guide for responsible data use, and I know that. And I think it's really key. You know, when you're spending $15 billion as an industry on data, there could be some temptation maybe to misuse some of this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You know, juke the stats a little bit. And consumers aren't going to like that.
We don't like it at all.
And we don't like that as an organization.
No, we don't.
So we're here to say, enough with the irresponsible data use. Here's a tool to help you use the data responsibly.
Boom diggy, my boy's spitting over here. So you, ANA members, you dear ANA members, have this playbook to you at no cost.
Wow.
You can get the playbook and find out more information on responsible data use that drives growth while protecting consumer privacy at ana.net/data. And now, on with the show. Everybody, we are back. This is On Scope, the marketing podcast. We are here with Devon DeBlasio, VP of Product at InfoSum. And Devon, we have really... I'm actually impressed how clear data clean rooms are in my mind right now. So for people who are getting excited, this is really one of the nuts that we've been trying to crack in marketing for decades. Yeah. What do marketers need to watch out for, especially if they're not well versed in this area?
Great question. I think the first thing is, what am I doing with my data? How much control do I have over my data? So I think the first thing is control. That's the first and foremost thing that every data collaboration platform or clean room should be upfront about. Who owns your data? You own your data, right? You as the data owner. And then they can't forfeit the control or visibility or transparency over that data. So that's number one. The second thing is, how fast can I actually execute? How long is it going to take me to stand this thing up? Is it going to be a burden to my IT teams? Do I have to talk to the CISO suite in order to get these things stood up when really the marketers are paying for the investment at the end of the day? And so I think ease of use and time to value is extremely important. Everyone has a budget that they're all trying to make sure it remains tight. Everyone wants to make sure that when they're investing in a piece of technology, the ROI can be generated as fast as possible. And I think a big misnomer that's been introduced into into the data clean room space is that it requires a heavy IT lift. It requires a very, very large long-term investment at the IT and technology level when that's not true, right? That's one thing obviously we do at InfoSum is make that very, very easy and a very light lift. The second thing you think about is who's actually going to be hands-on keyboard. So data clean rooms, I think, in many people's minds is a tool for the data scientist. It's a tool for the analyst. Those are expensive resources who have their hands tied, most likely doing something of more importance within the organization. And so really who's the hand-on keyboard user should be determined by those who are investing into that type of technology. If they only have someone who's maybe a planner or someone who is not proficient in SQL or Python, then great, let's get them into the platform using the tools without having to give them advanced training or have to spend the dollars and cents on a more advanced resource. And so that's another thing is ease of use and who's actually going to be doing the work is extremely important. And the last thing I would say is like really how much visibility do you have over the end-to-end scope of the multi-party collaboration? And so what I'm saying there is when we say multi-party collaboration, it should be multi-party, right? And so many people go into a data clean room and it's great when you're working with one partner at a time, right? I'm an advertiser. I want to work with this publisher. Great. Most of the technology out there works just fine for that. But as we just talked about earlier, many times you need an identity partner as a part of that as part of that party. You need a data partner as a part of that party. You need multiple publishers potentially as well. You need an agency involved. And so when you're talking about 2, 3, 4, 5 partners that have to be involved in a multi-party collaboration, that's where the rubber really meets the road in terms of whether or not the technology that you're investing in will work. And so we found that because we are born out of multi-party collaboration, because we work with three or more parties working together, that is the number one thing people are knocking on our door asking, like, can you actually make this scale with the way in which my business operates today, in which how I want to connect data today? It's not just 2 parties, it's multi-party. And so those are, I think, the main factors that people need to focus on is speed, ease of use, whether or not it's truly multi-party. And the last thing is how safe is it? That should be the number one thing that you're focusing on. What types of privacy-enhancing technologies, PETs as we're calling it, another 3-letter acronym. What are they using? How are those privacy-enhancing technologies combined together? They're not all built the same way. They don't all offer the same level of privacy and security. And so you do need to bring the right people, a CPO or someone else on the privacy and legal end into the conversation to really gut check and really go through with a fine-tooth comb the claims that some of this technology is making about keeping your data safe and making sure that you remain in control over that data and it's not being misused or mishandled.
Yeah, that all makes perfect sense and just brings me back to the days of programmatic that like the contract itself is so absolutely vital and you need somebody there kind of walking you through it to ensure everything that you just kind of laid out is guaranteed in writing.
Right. Just one point on that. So we did spend so much time, relying on paperwork to ensure the privacy and security of data. Paper is just paper. Again, a contract is a contract. There's repercussions for that. But what if someone is not being purposely malicious? What if someone makes a mistake when they're writing SQL or a Python query, right? That could uncover tons of information that they weren't privy to before, violating a lot of privacy principles and laws that they didn't intend to in the first place. So we really feel that the technology is not necessarily replacing the relationship between the parties involved or the contracts involved, but it should be there as a fail-safe. And so InfoSum really prides herself on being privacy by default, meaning that no matter what you do, you can't fuck it up. You can't make a mistake and to violate the privacy principles of your company or the other companies involved. And that's a huge factor that a lot of people don't think about, is that, this is not an easy industry. It's a very technically heavy industry. There's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts. Things go very fast. The programmatic industry is a great example of that was built for speed. And a lot of mistakes can happen in a very short amount of time. And having technology that can safeguard against that, I think, is one of the critical needs for data collaboration and data clean rooms to exist.
Here. Everybody run that last couple of minutes back because that is something that you really need to have in mind. I know just me personally, I have the clarity, I have the excitement around the possibilities of data clean room. That is definitely everything we just kind of went over is something you need to be absolutely up and down 100% about before moving forward.
Correct.
So thank you very much for all of that. Now, you recently conducted a workshop with A&A members highlighting everything they ever wanted to know about data clean rooms. Our team here at OnScope has cobbled together a list of questions that were submitted for that very event. And if it's cool with you, I'd love to finish this episode with a rapid fire round. You've got 30 seconds or less for each of the following questions. Devon, are you ready?
I am ready. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. Question 1. What is the difference between data clean rooms and Power BI reports?
The major factor, the difference there is the attention to the privacy controls. In the BI report, no one has any sense of how to control the data feeding into that BI report. There's no semblance of security over that data. So I would say that's the number one thing. But a data clean room and data collaboration platform should feed into a BI report, I think, in many ways as well. So they can be complementary.
That's actually kind of what I thought when that question popped up. So thank you. Can you elaborate on the nuances you've seen with how healthcare, pharma, or other heavily regulated industries are utilizing clean rooms?
Yeah, a perfect example is that the healthcare industry has been using data collaboration platforms or data clean rooms for a very long time, just not in the media and advertising space. So when you're talking about a healthcare provider working with an insurance company, working with a prescription manufacturer, those organizations have to leverage this type of technology and have for a very long time to share very sensitive information. And so this is just a continuation on these companies already knowing the value and the importance and the safety and sensitivity of their data. And they're just essentially allowing the marketers to essentially unlock the really sensitive, unique pieces of their customers without violating any of the privacy principles that they are governed to follow.
Very cool. Finally, an overregulated industry having an advantage in the marketing space, at least as far as clean room familiarity is concerned.
Exactly.
We love to see it. So what would you do if you have a data collaborator who doesn't want to share the actual data, but share data ranges and model data? Is that even possible?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what a data collaboration platform is built for. You're sharing you're connecting your data to this system, and you're allowing others to essentially query that data asset to actually get back aggregated results, as well as to drive models that can be done by another party, or people can bring their own models into the data collaboration platform as well. So it's purposely built for that. I want you to use my data to execute some sort of value without actually having to touch or feel or assume my data.
Very, very cool. So how do you know which clean room is the right one for you?
I would say InfoSum is the right data clean room for you, being a data collaboration platform first and foremost. But it really is the eye of the beholder. I think, again, based on everything we said today, it depends on the size of your company, the resources you have, the sensitivity of the data that you have, how fast you want to move. But really it comes down to, can you execute a solution and stand up a solution in a short amount of time that delivers the highest amount of ROI? And that's how I feel that InfoSum is really becoming the easy button for data collaboration across the ecosystem.
Very cool. And I think to your earlier point, the multi-source capability, I feel like should be kind of table stakes unless you're really going on a skeleton crew budget.
Exactly.
Last but not least, how do you manage stakeholders' expectations when the size of match rates is much smaller than third-party cookies they might be more used to?
Yeah, another misnomer. I would push back on that and saying that the match rates are not necessarily smaller. And so we've done the side-by-side test before. We have organizations that are constantly looking at this. We're like, hey, I have third-party data scale, but I heard that data is not really that reliable anymore, or I'm not allowed to use it anymore. If I just use my first party and run it up against someone else's first-party data, will I see a high match rate? And the answer is yes, you will, especially in Europe where they don't have identity partners in Europe. They're really just using hashed emails against hashed emails, and we're seeing what the true overlap is between those organizations. And so in many cases, you're seeing the same amount of scale, if not bigger. But in cases where you are seeing smaller scale, you're seeing higher relevancy and higher return on your investment because you're actually targeting the right users, using the right data, versus having a bunch of other muddied water data coming into the mix from third-party sources.
I absolutely love it. Devon, I am adding data clean room expert to my LinkedIn bio. Thanks to you, my friend. Thanks so much for being a guest on Scope.
Glad to be here. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
There we have it, folks. Another episode of On Scope, the marketing podcast. I want to give a big thanks to my guest, Devon DeBlasio, for having a really important and personally illuminating conversation around data clean rooms. Now, don't feel ashamed if you feel you need to go back and listen to this episode again to let it all really soak in. I'm probably going to have to do the same, but this is a topic we can't ignore and really feels like the way forward. Now, as always, your moment of marketing meditation. Take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, and consider these words by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Share your knowledge. It is a way to achieve immortality. Think on that, and I'll see you next week.